Hey everyone, welcome back to Dr. Binsardi's channel. Today, we are digging into some super interesting results from our SmartPLS model, but before we get too excited about our final numbers, we have to talk about the outer model, or our measurement model. You see, before we can talk about how one thing causes another, we have to make sure our survey questions are actually working, right? Well, when we look at our data, we found a couple of troublemakers that are totally distorting our results. First up is PQ1, which is supposed to measure perceived quality. But guess what? It has a loading of -0.160 and a p-value of 0.250. Since that p-value is way over our 0.05 cutoff and the loading is actually negative, it's basically telling us that it doesn't belong in the group at all. Then we have RI6 over in the repurchase intention block. Even though it's statistically significant, it has a negative loading of -0.359. How can one question go in the opposite direction of all the others in the same group? That's a huge red flag for a semantic mismatch or a coding error. Because these two are hanging around, our whole measurement model is compromised, and we just can't get a clean look at our paths until we purge them from the system. Now, even with those messy indicators, we can start to see the engine of our structural model finally firing up. Isn't it cool to see how these different drivers start to separate themselves? If we look at the paths, the absolute superstar here is customer satisfaction. With a path coefficient of 0.644 and a perfect p-value of 0.000, it's clearly the dominant force driving repeat sales in this model. It's basically screaming at us that happy experiences are the #1 reason people come back. Then we have perceived quality coming in second with a path of 0.213. Its p-value is 0.026, which is significant, but it feels a bit fragile, doesn't it? That's likely because that bad PQ1 indicator we talked about earlier is still dragging it down. And what about brand trust? Well, it's currently the weakest link with a path of 0.139 and a p-value of 0.074. Since that's above our 0.05 threshold, it's technically non-significant right now. Does that mean trust doesn't matter, or is it just being overshadowed by the measurement errors we need to fix? When we look at the big picture, we see an R-square of 0.983, which makes the model look almost perfectly predictive. But we have to ask ourselves, is this perfection real, or is it just artificial? As smart analysts, we have to warn our students and viewers that this perfect score is probably a bit of an illusion caused by those noisy indicators we found earlier. Can you imagine how much these paths might shift once we delete PQ1 and RI6? We might find that brand trust suddenly becomes significant, or maybe customer satisfaction isn't as dominant as it seems. The real magic happens when we clean up the mess and let the true theory shine through. So, are you ready to see what happens when we hit that delete button and rerun the model? Thanks for listening to Dr. Binsardi's channel.